All right, y'all. In the midst of all of this insanity, I actually want to share with you some things that I personally am kind of happy about. That maybe there's some things to look forward to, that maybe we might make some progress out of this, because it has been a trying few months for this great nation of ours, and quite frankly, the planet, after a few trying years. And I think I'm seeing some things that actually make me feel pretty good about the things that are happening. For instance, this whole coronavirus pandemic, which we might have forgotten is a thing, is still very much a thing. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed that for the most part, it seems like it's working. Everything we did to lock down, to shut down, to stay home, to flatten the curve worked. And one of the things, or is working, we're by no means out of the woods yet, and we might see another spike, especially since people have been out in the streets over these last couple of weeks, but we'll come back to that in a second. But I heard somebody say very early in this whole process that we would know we'd done everything right if it seemed like we'd over-exaggerated, and then, or if we'd done too much. And then another person I heard later would say we'll never know if we've done too much, but we will all know if we haven't done enough. And I just saw the World Health Organization saying that we avoided something crazy like 6 million cases or 60 million cases or something. Like a lot of people are still alive because we actually listened and did what we were supposed to do. And I gotta tell you, I think if you told me before that everyone in America would voluntarily stay indoors for like 3 months, I didn't think it was gonna happen. I mean, the environment got a chance to bounce back. You know, we hopefully got to reconnect. I think we are really in this process finding out what really matters. And this was a question that I'd posed to a few people, and I've talked about, and I might have talked about it with you, that I was wondering, to what extent did the coronavirus lockdown affect these George Floyd protests? Did it make them bigger, or did it make them smaller, in the sense that everybody kind of had all this pent up aggression and were sort of like ready to roll anyway? Or how many people stayed indoors because they were afraid of contamination, and maybe it would have been bigger if there'd been no COVID-19? I'm still going back and forth about it in my own mind, but I think I've kind of come down on the fact that the COVID pandemic made it bigger. People have had more time on their hands. They had more time to go out and engage civically. They had more time to be online and reading things and seeing the videos of what happened to him and what has happened since. But I also think the number one advantage that has come out of all of this, not advantage, number one benefit that has come out of all of this, from both the pandemic and the George Floyd protests, if you could call it an advantage, is I think it's given us a lot of perspective. We're starting to see what does and doesn't matter, what we do and don't need, what we can and can't live without. And I think that is important. And I think we were put in a place where we were sort of forced to be a little introspective, and quite frankly, out of fear of our own safety and the safety of loved ones. And then we see this terrible footage of this man being brutally murdered by the police, by the people that are supposed to be both protecting and serving him. And I think it just sort of triggered something, that we all were already in a mindset of thinking about mortality, you know, thinking about safety, thinking about what's important. And then it's the same governmental entity that is asking us to stay indoors for our own safety, is the one that took that man's life. And I think those things kind of combine to just sort of be a little like in people's minds. And I think the fact that people came out despite the pandemic, that the protests were so large and are continuing, might I add, despite the pandemic, is proof of just how moved and engaged people are by this. Now, again, I would say that if you went out in the streets and you were protesting, please do get your coronavirus test. You can get them at CVS. At least here in California, you can get them at CVS. I'm sure you can get them somewhere where you live. Do get checked out just in case. We don't want to undo all of our good work in the process of doing some other good works. But look at how many racist monuments have come down in the last week that were still standing, that made it through Ferguson in the last wave of taking down racist monuments. NASCAR forbid the flying of the Confederate flag. Think about that. Freaking NASCAR had to admit that, okay, maybe that's a little socially retrograde, right? I think it is a good sign of our overall progress as a society But you also got to see at the same time how much further we still have to go. How many people are still trying to argue? How many people are still trying to make it seem like getting choked for 9 minutes was George Floyd's fault somehow? Again, that doughy, flaccid Pumpion in the White House put out a tweet that he'd seen on the One America News Network that maybe the 75-year-old man that got knocked down and cracked his head on the pavement was an Antifa plant. Maybe he was a provocateur. Okay, so y'all, cognitive dissonance is a hell of a thing, okay? Cognitive dissonance is when you hold two completely contradictory ideas in your mind, and it is very painful. It is psychologically painful. And so you will look away or just be a hypocrite or deny one thing, where it's like, you can be like, I'm not a racist. I have black friends. I just don't want black people in my neighborhood. That sort of thing. Or I'm a Christian, but I hate Jews. No, that's not a thing, you know? Or I'm not homophobic, I just don't like being around gay people, right? These are all words I've heard said out loud, by the way. These were not reaches that I had to reach for something. Like, these were things I've had people say in my presence. I think you can imagine how that went for them immediately afterwards. But there's so much cognitive dissonance going on that these people just cannot admit. They cannot admit, even to themselves, their own deep-seated institutionalized racism, that it is easier to believe that a 75-year-old man is a plant from a semi-fictitious social organization. Which, again, by the way, if you find yourself on the opposite side of the fence of the anti-fascists, maybe it is you who needs to analyze your worldview, see where you are at this. Maybe you're on the wrong side of this thing. Also, when I say semi-fictitious, it is not that Antifa doesn't exist. It does, but it is a very decentralized movement. It is not the boogeyman that MS-13 was a couple of months ago. It's anything that you can point some old conservative person to and be like, look, they're them. Those are the boogeymen. And part of the reason why that got no traction is that old man looked like them. That's why it's not working. That's the whole thing about all of these protests. It's getting harder and harder to make it about them, those people, the brown people, the young people, the Muslims, the gays. It's everybody is out there, and everybody is in the streets, and everybody's getting tear gassed and beaten. And also, just on the off chance that you do know someone that maybe bought that particular pitiful spoonful of BS from on high there, that he had a scanner and was trying to jam their communications or whatever dumb crap he was saying at the time. They had all of his personal effects when they took him into the hospital. If he had some sort of scanner, we would know, because he went into custody with the cops. So it doesn't exist. In the fact that I, and hopefully you, and theoretically any reasonable person, could understand that in about an eighth of a second, tells you how morally and intellectually bankrupt the right wing of this country has become. And I gotta tell you, there's something that is a challenge for me, and this is a real challenge. Part of the reason why I do these videos, part of the reasons why I've done all the videos I've done over the years, is I myself like to think of myself as a person who builds bridges, who makes connections. And I've shared with you immediately after the election in 2016, I was very heartbroken. I was like, my country has betrayed me. My country has betrayed me. I really felt that way. And I immediately had gone to a wedding in Louisiana that I'd already committed to go to. It was 2 weeks after the election, and I went. And honestly, to tell you the truth, under different circumstances, I wouldn't have gone, but I'd already committed. It was a big deal. And the people there were all Trump voters. And man, I walked in prepared to be fully militant, face all balled up about it, you know, and I had a great weekend with those people. I had a great weekend. We had a good time. And I got an early reminder that they were still human beings, which was necessary. I needed that personally, just for my own worldview and sanity. The idea that they were still human beings. that I could egregiously disagree with, but it wasn't necessary to resent them as people. I had to put that away in my heart box. Now, fast forward 4 years later, if you're still on his side, if you're still supporting him and planning to vote for him in November, I got to tell you, by this point, I think you're just a bad person. I think you're just a bad person. There's the rape, the children in cages, the racism or diet racism. Even if you yourself can't see it, literally millions of us are telling us it's true. So you're saying that you know better than us? Remember the aforementioned cognitive dissonance. There's the sexism. There's the fact that he can't speak in complete sentences, that he has made a mockery of us on the world stage, that the economy is in shambles. And even though COVID may not be his fault, the botched preparation for it absolutely is. He has ruined America's standing on the world stage. And if he gets another term in office, it will never return, most likely. The world will move on without us, and it will be the single-handed doing of one overstuffed garbage bag of cheeseburgers and Coca-Cola painted orange. And the only reason he's even trying for re-election is to avoid prosecution in the state of New York for his numerous crimes, which they absolutely know about. And the entire machinery of government had to shift and turn and rotate to protect him from justice, from impeachment, from the Mueller inquiry, from the Russia probe, from things he did. Not a day goes by that he doesn't do something that would have ended the Obama administration. He does it daily. He does it daily. And if at that point, and also I need to remind you about the kids in cages, they're still down there. And when you ask yourself, what would Jesus do? I can tell you with the highest authority, it is not put kids in cages or stand by while they were in cages. So it is a moral issue now. It is. And unfortunately, if you don't like the taste of me telling you that being a Trump supporter at this stage now, at this late hour in 2020 makes you a bad person, I don't know what to tell you. The person that you're mad at is not me, it is the person in the mirror. For everybody else, for those of you that have realized the mistake you made before, maybe you did just want something new. Maybe you didn't like Hillary Clinton, didn't trust her, whatever. It's done. It's in the past. I'm giving you amnesty on all of that. And I would ask you, dear viewer, if you know someone that was a Trump voter and is saying now they do not plan to vote for him in the fall, don't browbeat them. Don't give them a hard time. Just be like, thank you, good. Because there is a built-up resentment in the minds, in the hearts and souls of some people in this nation that they would rather see all of us destroyed than see the libs prosper, even though the libs prospering is them prospering. We want to do crazy things like healthcare and education. I know. But there's still time for all of us. Again, the final battle comes in November. And again, I do feel good about this overall. We're seeing good progress. I think we as a society are being forced to look at what's important to us on a scale like never before. And it is going to come down to each and every one of us to answer those questions of what really matters. What really matters how we spend our money, what really matters how we spend our time, what really matters what we can and cannot accept from government officials and from each other. Based on what I'm seeing, it looks like the wind's blowing the right direction, but we got to keep pushing. And I need to reiterate for you again, please be careful. They are going to cheat in November. They're cheating now. Look at what just happened with the primary elections that just happened this week. Look at what happened with the voter disenfranchisement efforts that have been going on, voter suppression efforts that are going on. That is the next battle. That is the real battle. And that is the battle that we absolutely must and can win. All right? But in the meantime, keep up the good work. It is working. All right. Bye-bye.